As Bill Clinton once said, mental illness is nothing to be ashamed of, but stigma and bias shame us all. Over the years, the stigma around mental health has been talked about more and more. More people are able to get help nowadays compared to back then. In the early 1900s, people with mental illnesses were treated as science experiments. Doctors would perform risky, often deadly procedures in an attempt to cure patients. The mentally ill were often thrown, against their will, into sanitariums and mental institutions. With the advances of modern technology and destigmatization, mental health treatment is more accessible than ever. As people are more open to talk about their mental health struggles, the opportunity for treatment follows closely. People take various approaches when talking about mental health, but one of the most recent surfaces has been the incorporation of mental health in video games. Conventional depictions of health in video games are usually physical. Players have health bars that decrease when they get hit, or shields that temporarily save them. Game creators have now begun to experiment with incorporating mental health into a player's health bar. In the game This War of Mine, 11-Bit Studios took the meaning of health to another level when they incorporated mental health into their game. In the game, mental health is just as important as physical health. Everything the player does to the characters affects how they feel. At one point, the players are given the choice to raid a hospital, and if you choose to, your character becomes riddled with guilt and regret. Since This War of Mine takes place during a time of war, it becomes very easy for characters to become depressed, on top of being sick, hungry, and tired. You are able to read everyone's thoughts throughout the day, and see that a lot of them blame themselves for many things that would be out of a civilian's hands during times of war, like having a lack of food and resources. Characters in the game can become depressed to the point where they become broken, and if a character becomes broken, they are no longer able to move or eat, and will likely kill themselves shortly after. Just how the characters can become depressed, their moods can drastically improve if you perform acts of service, like giving supplies to a son whose dad is wounded. The incorporation of mental health in addition to the civilians' perspectives is what makes This War of Mine stand out from traditional war games where one may be a soldier shooting bad guys. 11-Bit Studios uses pathos in a way that effectively brings a realness to the game that games of similar genres lack. The incorporation of mental health, along with the feeling evoked while playing, results in a game that creates a lot of empathy for those who have had to endure the horrors of surviving modern warfare. Unlike This War of Mine, BioShock Infinite takes place in a more fantasy world and is also a more traditional first-person shooter. The main character, Booker DeWitt's health, is measured with a health bar and shield. Booker's main goal in the game is given to him by a duo called the Lutece Twins, who say, "Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt." Booker's backstory involves him going into a deep state of depression after the Wounded Knee massacre. He later gave his daughter away and spent his days drinking and living in shame and guilt. He gambled away all his money and sat alone in his house. The girl that Booker has to rescue is named Elizabeth, and she's been locked away all her life because of her powers. After Booker rescued Elizabeth, she reacted greatly to how little killing people affects him. Booker's backstory shows that he is susceptible to mental health issues, but during the majority of the game, Booker does not appear fazed by his multiple killings, even if they are self-defense. Booker is even eager to kill towards the end of the game, when he kills Comstock. Mental health is not accounted for in the game besides the backstory. The task, "Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt," was supposed to relieve all of Booker's problems. Instead, it wasn't so easy, and can be seen as a metaphor that healing is a complicated process that cannot end with the mere completion of a task. Booker's journey took many turns throughout the game, showing that how healing mental illnesses is not as simple as it seems at the surface. A path that works for one person may not be as easy for someone else. Another way games are incorporating mental health is for advocacy. The game Depression Quest by Zoe Quinn is not a typical game. It is an interactive game where you make decisions based on your character's mental health. Those decisions are either a step toward or away from improvement. The game's purpose is to show what it can be like to have depression. As one opens the game, it gives various warnings not to play if you are deeply depressed, and encourages you to get help if you are suicidal. While depression is a sensitive topic to talk about, the game effectively shows what it can be like to live with depression, as well as highlighting numerous ways one can reach out and get help. People who play Depression Quest, who have never had depression, can learn how to be more empathetic towards people with it, as they realize not all illnesses are physical. At the same time, This game may be harmful towards certain audiences who may perceive that the solutions shown in the game always work when reflected back onto the real world. A friend of someone with depression who thinks that they are trying to help may accidentally force their friend into something they're not ready for, like therapy or medication. Depression Quest and games like it create conversations gamers might otherwise not be having, and hence is an effective way to advocate for topics creators care about. In conclusion, the topics and messages incorporated into games have changed a lot over the years. While talking about mental health has its time and place, it is important that it is not kept in the dark. Incorporating mental health into video games shows that humans aren't invincible. Having a hero that combats both physical and mental barriers can show their audience how strong people with mental illnesses are. Mental health deserves to be a topic that can one day be talked about without remorse and guilt. Just as Bill Clinton once said, mental illness is nothing to be ashamed of, but stigma and bias shame us all.